So, hi, Jonathan.
Hello, Richard.
Hello. So, here we are on Anthroposophicum, and there's a brief intro. Anthroposophicum is looking to bring some kind of renewal, dare I say, resurrection to the anthroposophical impulse, which
Well,
has, and
there's,
again, I was looking
there's
into this the other day. You have an anthroposophical society and an anthroposophical movement. And what is the anthroposophical impulse? But I guess that's also making reference to the fact that there's a whole anthroposophical movement out here, very, very strong, that is not under those official what should we say? Anyway, why am I even going down this track?
yeah.
Why am I even starting on that? But renewal of anthroposophy. Did we even want to speak about this? I didn't. So let's backtrack. What we wanted to speak about was the guardian of the threshold, but more specifically, the three beasts.
Mhm.
And what are these three beasts encounter that you encounter at the threshold? So without giving so much preamble to explain it, maybe that's what we can explore, the three beasts. And I mean, we know from psychology we have an unconscious, we have things that through the 20th century we've all got quite used to speaking in this language of things, motivations, impulses. And I think we've also had a crash course in it in the last few years. And you could say for people who hadn't already woken up to a lot of this stuff anyway, born after the 60s, and those born before. But I think especially that whole subject of hypnosis and what it means is a far more in your face phenomena than it would have been in the 19 in the early 20th century around Steiner's time. I mean, he saw that coming, of course. So I think it's something we slip into quite easily, and that's what I'd like to explore, these three beasts, and we can look at the picture of Blake. But what does any of that
Well,
bring up for
um,
you?
yeah, I think it's quite accurate what you were saying, particularly within the last 3 years or so here in 2023. Um, people, so it becoming obvious a lot of sleepwalking or hypnotism that we have been doing in regards to sort of direction of society and um, the way the world's going in general, because it suddenly became apparent that there's sort of very powerful sort of movements that a lot of us have been quite asleep to, and so becoming awake to this kind of um, realization immediately puts one in touch with the first beast, which is a fearful experience. So you know, the first thing that might happen when um, one starts wondering about what direction is society really going, what's, you know, where's technology, a ramping up of technology and techniques and kind of like inhuman modelings. And I just mean that not in any judgmental way, but just in a kind of like a technical description that society seems to be sort of um, the society that we're being that we're sort of waking up to more seems to be taking all its directions from a kind of a very materialistic, technological.
But
Uh,
let me try and be provocative there with
yeah,
you and say to you, is that not something that you already knew from a very, very early age? I mean, to say that this is somehow new. I mean, I know we're trying to,
yeah, yeah,
we're
absolutely.
speaking as if, there's Mr. Normal in the audience who's watching this, and we do this also when we have private conversations.
Yeah.
You talk as if there's some like, and then
Well,
we forget that actually, we kind of knew a lot of this stuff back when we were 8 or 9.
yeah, but I think we've, at least I've tended to sort of kick the bucket further down the road, thinking, it's there. I know it's there, but it's not the main issue. I can kind of la di da di da continue anyway. And I think this is the difference over the last 3 years or so, is that um, we could say that we could see all this bringing society to a brink. I could use the word abyss, but I maybe use the word brink here, where I say, okay, do we go to sort of full on, transhumanist? The human has got to be, everybody's the same. They all have to take the same things, do the same things, learn the same things. Do you know what I mean? Like more or less like a computer program. Do we do that? Or do we start, okay, we've got all those abilities, very useful and sort of helpful in certain directions, or do we start trying to rediscover our deeper humanity, more humane society? So we seem to be really at that brink now.
But if you excuse me for being provocative, my answer to that would be no, no, nowhere, absolutely hopeless, no politicians. And I think it's important to actually state the things as they are.
Uh-huh.
It's perverse. The level of morality, the level of character that we have in politicians is just is shocking. And despite the fact that they're puppets, and you can see this going back since the 80s, 70s, Thatcher, Reagan, to be honest, I don't take these people seriously. Like, I know they're in the history books, and I know if you went on some mainstream like talk show, they would ask you to qualify that, and I feel I could qualify that. I don't think these are. I think they're placeholders for an agenda, and that's
Yeah,
not the agenda of markets and market reforms to bring in ever greater. Well, then I'm in the danger of then explaining all the things we already know about capitalism and
yeah.
all of that kind of thing.
So maybe
So,
what with what you're saying, what it kind of brings to the fore is, yes, these people, there's something behind them, and they're being driven by forces that they're more or less unaware of, and so our society is going that direction, and they're so for me it's really saying I cannot ignore this any longer. The
and then I think it switches fully round to the proactivity of individuals. And I
yes,
think, because then you're saying, well, where can the change come if it can't come from a corporate CEO, or it can't come from a politician in one of those tenured positions, or an academic? And this is really interesting. I did a video. I don't know if you saw it a week back or something, and this was on Dan Evans' book, which was A Nation of Shopkeepers, the Petty Bourgeoisie, and
okay,
it showed 6 classes. And I found this fascinating, where he describes new conceptualizations of those are Marxist distinctions, and he points out that we have a working class who don't really care anymore about politics. It's yeah.
They just want to carry on without their
And
involvement.
okay, they are challenged with an attack on trade unions, and from the Tory power as it is now in UK. But he was describing the old petit bourgeoisie shopkeepers, and then a new petit bourgeoisie, like overeducated, like with Blair, 50% will have university education,
Right.
and then they it's a situation I think sometimes we find ourselves in, overeducated people then looking for jobs serving coffee or
Yeah. Yeah.
and that's the kind of nightmare uh scenario. But I think it faces a lot of people where they're not finding a challenge in their work. And it's the other thing I found very interesting was, I think it was Andrew Marr talking about, in the next 10 years we're going to have a 30% of the workforce, white collar workers, are going to go because of AI. So all of your corporate bank clerks, teachers, managerial class, a lot of them are going to be gone within
Exactly.
10
Exactly.
years.
Yeah. And so everything's looking quite frightening in that respect, that the sort of fabric of society is changing so quickly. A lot of it ramped up by this technology. Um, uh, and so, what does it mean to us each individually? That
Well, I think it's good to be specific in that case when we say it's frightening. I know what you mean. There is that fear, that first beast fear, and I think it's good to get specific in two ways about it. You can get specific in terms of saying, okay, the fear of what, and then you can list the kind of agenda 2030 things that are coming down the line. And then to get specific from the anthroposophical perspective and say, can you, I know we were speaking about this the other day, can you picture in imagination that beast that is geschrumpfed, shrunken with a bony head? And can you experience yourself becoming that? And that's an experience certainly over the last months that I was working a lot with, and seeing that part of myself that just doesn't want to think things through and gets into that frenzy of fear and ends up very shrunken and very bony and non-human.
yes, yeah,
And that's that also they're trying to trigger us on with this fake alien thing, that on that anyway. So that I think I think we see more and more the importance of the occult, to understand these things. But in terms of getting back to the frightening aspect, well, yeah, it's going to be middle class losing houses, mortgage payments are going to be you're going to get stripped of more and more wealth, and then it's going to be, okay, we say that you need to live in this place, or you need to take these people according to the law, and you can only travel to, what was it, 15-minute cities they were talking all about in Scotland the last time I was out there, where you're not allowed to travel out of a 15-minute radius of your house because of sustainability. And it's going to creep up on us. So I think it is frightening. I think it's going to creep up on us, and we're going to end up, 10, 20 years time, we'll be in that kind of thing, but we'll have time to prepare. And that's going to be the thing in this 10, 15, 20 years, the preparation about where you're going to live, what you're going to do. Have you got the spiritual resources? Who are the people
yeah.
that you're going to work with?
Yeah, and I think that's key because we're bringing these concepts of the three beasts, and fear being one of them, with this shrunken head, from the first class, but which is something which one intentionally meets, going the path of the first class and reaching an abyss where one realizes, okay, the material world that I've been used to being living in so far cannot take me any further. To go further, I'm going to have to change. And immediately you realize my head's bony and shrunken. I don't know what to do on stepping over out of this, what I'm used to. And so it's frightening. I'm scared. But I think because of what we've been talking about with society, that that's also recognizing that societies, we're all doing it as a society as well. We're being brought to this abyss as society as well. That's particularly, it's ramped up particularly in the last 3 years. And I think the key is, or at least one of the keys is in what you said about who are you going to be with? Because if you cannot rely on any of the old structures of society, they're falling down, they're being moved, the goalposts are being changed completely. With our old bony heads, shrunken ways of doing things, they're going to sort of meet the new situation, and the back's going to go crooked. Oh my God, I can't stand upright. I can't meet this situation. I don't know what to do. I'm frightened. And so really we're being asked, A, to meet ourselves, but B, obviously to meet other people, because I think that's going to be, the realization that's coming more and more is that spiritual work is based in karma, is, who we meet, who our destinies are with, and what we can do with and for each other.
Absolutely. And I think that's going to be the key. And also the, physicality. Okay, the Zoom is fantastic, and this is all new experience that we can do this, and we met through online platform and stuff like this. But the physicality where you can be with people that will talk to you about what it means to be upright, or to change your speech, or to do artistic work together. That's where people are going to be looking for that more and more, I feel. Well, some people will, some people won't. Some people are going to go in the other direction, and this is what you see, where people that are becoming more deformed and frankly psychotic. It's like the manifestations of people in people that I know that are manifesting aspects of psychosis, and it's then reminding yourself of what common sense is, and what it means to be a good person. And it seems like the basics are up for grabs, which is great in terms of building, like if you were to look at it as a market opportunity in terms of building spiritual community. I did a post today just about what it means to be a friend.
Right.
Yeah. And a great quote from Emerson, which was, a friend is someone, what was it? I have to tell you it.
Who thinks good things of you.
Yeah, a friend is a person who says good things about you behind your back.
Yeah, that was it. That's great. Exactly. Because that is a deed. Because you're not saying it to their face, because then, they're going to slap you on the back and you'll all be happy together, and it's a bit self-satisfying. But they get nothing from it. In that sense, it's a purely spiritual deed. And, that is really the only way forward. It's either, living in denial, things are changing very rapidly, it's becoming a little bit it's becoming unsettling, a bit frightening. And so that's it. You either, your back just becomes crooked, your head stays shrunken, and you deny it. Or, you have to grasp the metal, and you say, okay, so I'm going to fortify the spiritual component of life, which is things like that. Exactly what you. you just said that Emerson quote.
And then there was this second beast, which is described as, in German, it's mit den gespaltenem Maul,
Gespalten.
which is a split mouth.
Mm.
Yeah, and sometimes it's translated as a grimace, or as a warped mouth. And the sense I get of this is,
it's like yellow and black, isn't it?
I did this impression the other day, but it's yellow. It's yellow with grey spots.
Yellow, grey. Yeah.
And again, it's like you can kind of see this sense in an aura of having holes, you know, like,
right.
And to see there's bits that I haven't connected up or have become whole-like through this. And I think I also emphasized this the other day, through this, what was it? Hate. And then, everybody was talking about, oh yeah, you can hate people and you hate her and stuff like that. And okay, that's like talking about the word hate. Yeah, okay. But in the mantra, it refers to your hate of spiritual revelation has created the weakling in your feeling life. And it's that spiritual revelation that through this bony head, but also you're in your feeling life where you say, I don't want to know, I don't want to know that. And this is like not consciously, because we're all saying, yeah, I want to know about the spiritual. I want to go to workshops and conferences and read all the books there are, Rudolf Steiner. And
but that part of that, in a way, can become this, like, this grimacing, this pushing it away, because you can just fill yourself with content, continual, like, this content, without actually getting to the nitty gritty, the essence.
Well, I think
I see
that's
myself
why
having done that.
I mean, you're picking it up too. I liked it too, the translation as grimace, because grimace for me is the inner experience. And I also find myself doing it quite often physically. So I have quite a nice placement of the moon, which means I like inner conditions just come out on my face. It's like I have the moon near the ascendant. So like that expression of, like, people sometimes say, why, Richard, why are you squinting? It's like, I know, I kind of got some kind of awful grimace going on.
Yeah.
And it's like your feeling life is picking up so much of a spiritual situation in a certain situation. I don't know, a meeting with people or in a work situation, and you're picking up so much of the spiritual and you're seeing so much. And then it's like your responsibility for it is overwhelming, and you end up doing that face, like stressful,
trying to grin.
Yeah, like, kind of awful grin.
Yeah. I think I think you're right, because sometimes, I make jokes and make light of things, and I think sometimes it's very good. But I think that can also be part of this grimace. It's like brushing a serious issue away.
Well, it's a very British, it's a thing we do well, isn't it? It's like our folk soul. Let's just make sure if nobody's embarrassed, and let's just make sure that we have some humor and some wit, and everything will be okay.
Yeah. But this is, and we've been doing that for so long that perhaps, personally, I feel it in my life, and seeing it in the world now. It's sort of saying, no, you can't stop. You can't continue ignoring these things. It needs to stop. It might be a bit tumultuous. It might be a bit not all rosy, or not, at least not what one expected or what one hoped. But it's the whole point of this is that it's for brighter fields on the other side. But the point is that to get to those brighter fields, you know, the real truth, um, the reality of the way things really are, one has to let go of all one's illusions here now, and that's going to feel unpleasant, and you know, one's probably going to hold on with a grimace and, you know,
Yeah.
bare one's teeth and say no, no, no.
Well, that's why I think that's where anthroposophy and anthroposophy specifically with these new concepts of, you know, what is the guardian, what are these three beasts differentiating, all of the philosophical stuff, because there's so much exact content that you have to get your head around. I think that's then really helpful for your unconsciously, because it gives you hope, because it's like, yeah, if when the shit really hits the fan and you need something really to put yourself back together, and everyone's going to get to that point, you know, whether they went through it in the last 2 months with this Venus return, or whether they went through it in the last 3 years when they got lost everything because of lockdown or COVID or whatever, or whether you knew this all your life and this is kind of like, you know, still an awful feeling of seeing things exposed in the world at large. But I think in those that point of crisis, to then see, okay, here are the resources. There are resources where I can really construct myself completely anew and put these things, put myself together, kind of over the threshold, because we're talking about, and we know this from Bible and esoteric tradition, there's a process of death and resurrection, death within life. Did you think that was going to be easy? That it
Yes,
wasn't going to be like, you know, the confrontation with the pain and slowly disentangling with the physical world is an enormous, incredible process. And I think that seriousness and daunting nature of the spiritual path, I think often that gets, well, I know it gets washed over by,
yeah,
some people want to make it all about heady stuff about it, you know, it's all about I'm right, you're wrong. Did we get the exact, you know? And then, or then there's people on the other side who said, well, it doesn't matter, we can just, you know,
feel
play
it.
the drums and
Yeah,
um
yeah. Well, that's right, because that's something anthroposophy offers, and I think in other places other people have offered it too, in slightly different ways. But it's this real realism, saying, and I mean, it's why it's in the first class, in the first lesson. It's the first lesson. It says you've got to meet these three, because if you don't, you're going to go ahead in an illusion. You know, you're going to draw a veil over some difficulty, and you'll miss the actual boat. Um, and I think that kind of brings us in a way to the third one, which is doubt in the spirit, in the power of the spirit, because
yeah, and I'd like to jump in right there
uh-huh,
so that we go more specific into the doubt of the spiritual and go, I found what was most striking about that image of the third beast and how I experienced it, because when I went into that image and into that beast, was the glassy eye.
mhm,
And there's something very hard. I mean, first of all, you have the image of the blind eye, and I know this well because my cat has a blind eye. You know,
mhm,
it's gone all cloudy.
yes.
And I kept having to remind myself, no, it's a glassy eye.
So what's the difference? What's a glassy ice like?
Well, a glassy eye is like, I'm not sure what it is, but what it evokes in me is that mix between sort of a cloudy eye and a hardened
Yeah.
glass eye,
Right.
where
So it's not really alive.
there's no alive perception. There's almost like an automatic kind of robotic,
Right.
but that wasn't really it. I think it's the nature of glass, that hardened,
Hmm.
round glassiness and the blind cloudy nature. That's what it evokes in. It's a very specific inner experience in feeling, I think, when you to behold that and then to realize that it's knowledge, the lack of your creation of spiritual knowledge, that you're not creating spiritual knowledge, you're simply repeating things and seeing things through this fog. And combined with the other two, with this grimace and this kind of bony head, you do see how it's not surprising that you get into sort of conditions of feeling like imprisoned.
Yeah. I think I've been feeling that um, a lot in the sense that when I've been sort of contemplating these three, the doubt is the one which I felt the least had experience of. So initially, I was kind of thinking, well, that's good because I don't have that doubt. But then I sort of came to realize, well, no, perhaps that's just because it's kind of speaks to me the least. It's the most powerful one in me because it's the more um, unconscious one still. And I think that for me, that's been the case because I've sort of, spent about, going on 30 years on a spiritual path, having, thinking because this is real, this is the way to be and the way to go, but never actually realizing it. So, like you mentioned, it's been sort of ideas and words and just this kind of like glassy stare at the spiritual reality without actually um, moving something in myself to start making it a reality. So it's not something doubtful. It's not something that I'm kind of like hopefully working towards, but just doing things by rote automatically, but something that's actually, a creative.
So
Um,
would you say then that a crisis is like then actually something far better than some kind of harmonious I've got all my ducks lined up and everything's all right with me, Jack, kind of attitude, yeah,
exactly.
that you come across, like, oh, that's those, you got everyone nicely apportioned. Those are the people that need to be condemned, those are the people who are doing everything wrong. I'm all
This is my
okay.
spiritual path.
Yeah, everything's going all right for me. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
And I think it's those times of crisis. And there were these three abysses when I wrote about this the other day, and I identified because I wanted to go back in my own life and see these three abysses of the it's before the beasts,
Mhm.
and I wanted to just run it by you and see how it chimed with you. And it was the abyss of time, the abyss of space, and the abyss of the human heart.
Yes.
And I know that, someone close to me always says to me, well, wherever you go, Richard, you're always going, they don't say Richard in that condescending way, actually. Um, I know, where's that coming from? That's the second beast. Anyway, let me start again. Wherever you go in life, you will always take yourself with you, which sounds quite trite.
Mhm.
But it's a truth that speaks to the abyss of space that due to one's subjectivity, wherever you are, you're going to be mirrored. And I find that quite helpful as the to think of that in terms of the abyss of space. And then the second one was I was going through a lot of crises at some point when I was at my art school with different karmic relationships, and could not being able to make head or tail of them, and couldn't understand what was going on, didn't know even if I was going to complete the training and things like this. And a lot of, quite incredible things happened that really were not very easy to explain with normal consciousness. And I said my teacher kind of knew bits of this. He was a kind of wise anthroposophical kind of person, and he said to me, you're not going to know until the end of the story. You don't know. That's, if you look at a story in a fairy tale or something, there's, at some point there's doomed in a swamp or imprisoned with a dragon in a castle, and they don't know that the next scene they're out of the castle. And I think that was very helpful, and that speaks to the abyss of time, that eternally you're not going to be stuck in a situation, even when you have to be stuck and feel all of the depth of what it means to be in a dungeon, or to be waiting to be burnt at the stake or something. That those feelings are dreadful and awful, but that eternal part of the spiritual path is then understanding that that's an abyss that one can learn to face, and one has to learn to be able to see things from an eternal perspective. And so that was very helpful. And then the third one was going right the way back. So this was also like in a time sense, going all the way back to when I worked in a children's home, and it was a very tight knit team. And at the end of when I left, they all noticed that I was a little bit different, let's say, because I had this spiritual side. And you know how like normies are. And he said to me at the end, well, Richard, I hope you find what you're looking for. That's how people from outside talk about it, because they recognize that you're on some kind of quest. We're not stupid. We recognize where people are at. For this guy, I knew for him what was important was that his wife makes nice chicken rice, and that's what for him life's about. But he could see that for me it was some kind of quest or some kind of spiritual. And he says, well, and I think that's again something in the colloquial, I hope you find what you're looking for. And for me, that's the human heart. That if you're on a spiritual path, that you are kind of living under the understanding that that's going to be a path of suffering in many ways.
Yes.
And or a deepening through that suffering of the human heart in a human sense. And that's another abyss. And I thought I'd tell you those little anecdotes and just see how. Do you think that? Do you think that's helpful in to bring those in relation to the three beasts?
I think yes, because as you said, they come in the same lesson, and there's three abysses and three beasts. I don't know myself personally how to join them. For me, maybe a bit more abstractly than you. I take the abysses sort of more generally as, space is the external world, time is like history, and the human heart is the individual, and really that's all we have, space, time, and
But that's what I was trying to do. I was sent, to come deeper away from that kind of abstract um looking at it and just saying, how is it that I in my body experience that? How do I realize that, if I sometimes, I don't know if you have this experience, but it's like, oh my God, I'm up and it's another day. And, where the hell are my days going? I'm just in another day, and then it's another day, and then another day, and suddenly, like, I'm 50 and 20 years have gone by. And then another thing is like, where am I living? Where, and I think those are also experiences about making it more specific, your relation to that abyss of space. Like, what does it, what am I carrying through this door? What am I, is this house where I live? Do I even realize living in another country? And what's
yeah,
going on? I mean, all of those mysteries of also
yeah.
of, you see, like, everything's got very, very dark, in the mornings now, and suddenly it's just incredible. You within a month, you've gone from that bright summer, incredibly sort of blinding or radiant cosmic light, and suddenly we're in this, these dark golden colors, and then this dark early morning and evening, and you're kind of getting a sense of that path. I like that description in Steiner about that, how the meteorites come into the earth and you feel the iron in your blood that will take you down through the months, down on the path to the middle of winter, to Christmas.
Hmm. I don't know really how to respond to that, because for me, really, the situation, each day is an experience of panic because um, I've opened my eyes, there's space, and that's immediately there's an inrush of demands and things that have to be negotiated throughout the day. There's time, and then I look at my son and the responsibilities I hold towards him, and that's a really strong sort of heart experience of the
Mm,
heart,
mm,
and they're all, for me personally at the moment, they're all kind of panicky situations.
mm,
That that first beast, perhaps because it's really testing my doubt um, in what is this all about? Why am I here? I've been placed. Do I have I laid all my reliances on things out in time and space,
mm, mm.
and beyond
And
my
also seeing, I think, the possibility of control over that panic, and what to ask yourself, what would have to happen to be able to live without that panic. And I'm not saying preaching that as if I don't have that, um but that's, I think, recognizing, I think, some of the resources that would come from confronting the other two beasts, which through
yes,
knowledge and feeling, that you could set set it up so that panic would be less, and you would, you know
yes,
but I certainly know, I understand what you mean. You've got 100 things that need to be done.
yeah.
I
Well,
mean, I was then looking at a job the other day, night receptionist at a hotel in by the airport.
uh-huh.
And I kind of got into a bit of a panic about that, because I was thinking, well, if I don't sleep, then I could get into a really bad situation. It kind of ruin my health, and I kind of just got really panicked and freaked out about that. And but it's part of a, you know, job search of like sort of contemplating what life would be like living with that job.
Hmm.
And, you know, so, but there's, you know, each time that you go for, like for me, because I haven't been sort of actively in the job market for many years, and that creates panic. That the you know, every
Yeah.
application that goes in,
Yes.
and rather than do it, and I think this is where those three abysses come together. Like you're calling it panic, but in another sense, it's showing up. It's and okay, it may be uncomfortable, but that's a challenge to get into it, so you don't feel that that's uncomfortable because it's showing up. There's the things you have to do for your
Courage.
son, and you have to do
Courage.
to get your job, and
Yeah.
you have to feed the cats, you know.
Well, I mean, the answers are in the descriptions of courage, fire, and creative work. Um, and so, starting from the bottom, in a sense, from the doubt, the creative work, has been me, despite that panic, finding times in the day to work creatively inwardly. And I'm not
Mm,
going to say specifically what I do because it would be slightly different for everyone else. So
mm,
don't want it to sound like a prescription.
yeah.
And the fire for knowledge that meets the second beast, the with the grimace,
Mm,
the hatred for spiritual reality is that's like an energy to hold that back and in a sense to wait and see, not to attack and push away, but wait and see despite the rising panic. And then
yeah.
obviously that courage to meet that panic, even so.
Yeah,
It's
this is from Blake here. This is what I do during the day when I have to try and do something creative. But this is Blake's from Dante, and you've got quite a nice grimace on the second
yeah.
beast here, and then you have the she wolf, and then you have this kind of quite bulbous like dog
Ah,
beast.
uh-huh.
And then the two figures, you know, I think this is especially evocative of course of Dante and Beatrice as the feminine and the red and white coming
Uh-huh.
together.
Uh-huh. So that Beatrice is what he's looking for, what
Well,
he's hoping to find,
eventually
what he's
that's
looking.
his whole journey is to she's calling him forth, a bit like in Faust, where it's Gretchen at the beginning, and then when he goes over into the spiritual world, that's an image of Helena. It's the same thing in as Dante goes through the different layers of hell. He's at the beginning entranced by Beatrice, who he sees in the street, and then he's seeking her, and she's guided. It's this longing for unity with her that's guiding him until she then brings him to first of all Bernard from Clairvaux, and then on to Christ. So it's and she's then quite you know, quite strict with him. It's no it's a no it's no romantic comedy here.
Mm,
She tells him off quite a lot, um, and sort of brings him in line,
mm.
before he meets then Bernard of Clairvaux and Christ. So Yeah, but the which canto is that? I think it's also fairly at the beginning.
Yes, it is.
Canto 1, I think. Um, and there it's a panther and a she wolf. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, well, the fact that she's quite severe with him, tells us that, in a sense, tells me to kind of take up a more um, upright and kind of strong attitude to myself.
Mm.
To call on that in me that is beckoning me forwards, and to
I mean, I think one thing that's quite helpful at the moment, you can every now and again it comes around these great kind of apocalyptic conspiratorial, oh my God, there's going to be another, masks and the end of the world is nigh. And um I think that's a good one to practice restraint just in one's own inner life. And it was becoming quite medieval at points in the last couple of years and superstitious within a lot of anthroposophical circles. And as much as, I like conspiracy as much as the next person, but people had really become that kind of frenzied, hysterical, um, you know, really
I was
extreme
feeling it. Yeah, yeah,
and quite and normal people becoming saying quite psychotic things,
yeah.
that if you get the vax, then you'll be imprisoned, and after death, you'll never leave a certain ring around the earth, and things like this. And um, that need one to believe in an authority other than yourself,
Mm,
and two, just enjoying the drama of it.
mm,
Yeah, like the the drama of, oh my God, they're all trying to kill us. Yeah, there's an, Zizek would say there's an incredible surplus enjoyment in that.
mhm,
There's like, be honest with yourself that there's an incredible amount of, I mean, just
mhm,
going to the just going to out the door and saying some people are going to have diseases triggered by getting jabbed, whatever. That's okay. um that stays still s- grounded. Yeah, but once it gets into, you hear it in people's um expressions, and I hear it all the time because we have an esoteric center here, and they'll just go there every week. And again, is part of my therapy to tell these stories to people. Is where I've been to seminars that go on every week, and this was 3 years ago. Then it was like, yeah, by the end of the summer, we're all going to be in concentration camps. Yeah, and then the other thing is, I hadn't listened to some of this Q stuff from Trump, and then I listened again yesterday after a year, and it's the same thing. Next week, this is the crunch week. This is the week when they're all going to be taken and put in front of the court, and we're going to go into the 1,000 years, the golden age, and Trump's going to ride on his white horse. And you think to yourself,
Weird. It's a lot.
I just incredible things that I think probably if we went back 20 years, you would have more people just not taking it seriously. But that's um again, I don't even know why I'm bringing that up. Um
It just makes me think it's another way. If things are looking a bit unsettling, um, one getting afraid, one getting all grimaced and doubting that there's any way out. So it's all like, or you know, doubting that the spiritual call that you're meeting is the
Well, it's an incredible thing,
what's
isn't it?
really
If I go back to that picture, if you just think to yourself, is it an incredibly beautiful human thing that, okay, you haven't got anything else in your life,
yeah.
but at least you can create these three guys. Yeah. You can't even see the two lovely human, like graceful Eurythmists on the left,
Right,
but
right.
at least you can create these three monsters.
Mm,
And
mm,
I think, in a deep sense, that is all we've got. All we've got. We're not actually human yet. We don't actually have a human shape spiritually. We have just got these disastrous, like,
beast.
abominations.
Hmm.
And I think somehow I find that quite reassuring because that's what we're doing all the time. We're like, actually, otherwise these guys would just dissolve. So all the time you're like saying, oh, I'm going to get out my grimace thing again. Oh, I'm going to get out this wonky she wolf with at the top, or this snarly thing. I'm going to get those guys out again because I don't I don't know what else to do. I can't see anything else. So I'm just going to get these guys out.
There's activity and life in that. Yeah.
Yeah.